Welcome to the Town of Poland Meet the Candidates Night. This event is sponsored by the Friends of Ricker Library, was created and directed by Susie Stover, and I am Randy LeClaire, your moderator for the evening. The opportunity tonight is to meet the different candidates for the different races. As you see, we have two from the Senate here right now. Election day is November 8th. The polls for Town of Poland will be open from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Voting will be at the Poland Town Hall right next door. It's my understanding that as of October 7th, absentee ballots will be available. Please check with the clerk about specifics for the absentee votes. Candidates for other offices other than those listed on the ballot may be in attendance and will be given an opportunity to introduce yourselves at the end, say a little bit about your positions. The positions we're looking at today are the Senate, and running for Senate is Eric Brakey and Kimberly Sampson. House District 65, Elijah Breton and Ellie Espling. Ellie will not be in attendance tonight, but she has asked to have a statement read. There we go. House District 66, Jessica Fay and Mike McClellan. Now, the way the format will work, we have three main segments. One will be devoted to each race. Each candidate will be introduced and be given 3 to 5 minutes to introduce themselves. And then we'll take questions from the audience, both on TV and local. The fourth segment, which will be at the end, will be for candidates of other races. Anyone who's here that we may not acknowledge right off the bat can, at that point, can introduce themselves. Questions will come from the audience here. If you have a question, raise your hand. I will acknowledge you and step up to the mic, or we have another mic to pass around. You're expected to state your name and then address your question. We can also email in to Linda Carey, and I believe on the screen for those of you at home, you can see the email address there. Email your questions to her and she will get them to me and we will address them. So, without further ado, we have Eric Brakey and Kimberly Sampson.
Thank you.
So, Kimberly, I'm going to let you go first.
Well, first, thanks for hosting this. I appreciate the Friends at Ricker Library hosting this and putting this on. And Susie, thank you very much. And Randy, of course, thank you. My name is Kimberly Sampson. I am a fourth-generation Mainer. I grew up in Auburn. And until 8th grade, I attended Eastgate Christian Academy and New Gloucester. And then I graduated from Edward Little in 1997. Some of you know my mom, Sonia Sampson. She's actually in the audience today, and she was a former state representative several years ago. She's also served on the Auburn School Board and is now the director of the registrar at Central Maine Community College. And then there's my dad. He's been at Bath Iron Works for 30-something years, and we've learned from an early age that Bath Built is best built. He actually was on the design team for the Zoom Vault, so we're very proud of the work they've done. And then there's my brother, who is a merchant marine. He's a graduate of Maine Maritime Academy. I went to the University of New England, and I spent the last 13 years working as a dental hygienist. I am absolutely passionate about my patients. I could talk to you at length about that. Where else do you get to spend 1 full hour with your patients every 3 to 6 months? I absolutely get to know who my patients are, and I get to know their concerns and their questions, and I absolutely love that. Their stories are burned into my soul and have been the genesis for every major decision in my life for the last probably 10 years. About 5 years ago, I had a patient who came in, and she was my favorite patient, and she was diagnosed with breast cancer. And she had to make the choice between getting her cancer treatment at $38,000 a month and having nothing left to live on, should that treatment be successful, or using her limited resources to say her goodbyes. And I can't imagine having to make that choice. I don't think any of you could either. And at that point, I decided that I would I needed to get more involved in public policy. I knew that if I was seriously going to advocate for my patients, that I needed to take off my scrubs and put on a suit and get to work and do the hard things. And so I went back to school. I got my degree in communication with a focus on media studies so that I could understand how the news media outlets worked, who to trust, who not to trust. And then I went to law school, and my focus was on healthcare and national security law. I am absolutely passionate about helping our state move forward. And in that effort, I have spent the last 7-8 months trying to go door to door and listen to your concerns. And in that time period, I've met older couples who couldn't afford their medications. I've talked to older couples who were getting taxed out of their homes and are truly worried about where they're going to go. I've spoken to kids who are drowning in student debt and have no choice but to go find jobs elsewhere. I've talked to grieving families who had good kids who made bad choices and were the victims of an opioid epidemic that is taking our state, in droves. We must do better. We can do better. And I have a plan to do that. I have reached out to Congressman Seth Moulton's team in northern Massachusetts to try to bring jobs here and to build better economic cooperation. I want a lower cost for health care. We can do something about the dramatic cost of health care. We can accept the federal ACA funds. We're losing $900,000 a day because of our failure to do that. We can build a better infrastructure. That includes high-speed rail. It includes bridges, roads. We can't, and Wi-Fi and cell service. We need to do better on that. So moving forward, I have the IBEW and the AFL-CIO endorsements. I also have the Sierra Club and the Maine Educational Association's endorsements. I'm thrilled about all of those, and I look forward to hearing any of your concerns and questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Eric?
Well, hello. First, let me say I'm Eric Brakey. I'm your state senator. I've had the pleasure of serving you these last 2 years. And so first, I want to say thank you to the people of Poland for electing me 2 years ago, for putting your faith in me and giving me the opportunity to serve you. I really hope to have the continued opportunity to continue serving you for another 2 years. And first, I just want to say, one of the best pieces of advice that was given to me when I was first elected to the state Senate, someone took me aside and said, Eric, you're going to get there, and on the first day, you're going to look around at the Senate, you're going to look around at the institution and all the people you serve with, and then you're going to take a look at yourself, and you're going to ask yourself, how in the world did I get here? But then, after a few days and you settle in and you get used to it, you're going to take another look around, you're going to take a look at the institution, you're going to take a look at your colleagues, the folks you work with, and you're going to ask yourself, how in the world did these people get here? And it's funny, but it's also sadly a little true. I know, having served in Augusta these last 2 years, I've seen some trends that I personally don't like to see. I know I've seen a lot of legislators who don't bother to read the bills. They simply go to party leadership. They ask them what's in the bills, and they follow a party line. John F. Kennedy once told us, let us not seek the Republican answer or the Democratic answer, but the right answer. And that's been my philosophy while I've represented you these last 2 years. That's why I have a record as being one of the most independent members of the Maine Senate from either party, Republican or Democrat. Because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter to me who sponsors a bill or which side of the aisle it comes from. The only thing that matters to me is it good policy for the people of Maine? That's why I've been able to build relationships across the aisle and work with people to tackle the opiate epidemic here in Maine, really favoring a treatment-based model versus an incarceration-based model. I've worked across the aisle on issues of criminal justice reform and civil liberties, even working with our own Democrat Sheriff Eric Sampson on criminal justice reform issues. But I think that at the end of the day, it's very important. I think one of the big takeaways we would all like to walk away from this forum having an understanding of before we go to the ballot boxes, our candidates, what are the beliefs and the principles that will guide them as they make decisions over the next 2 years? And I'm happy to tell you exactly what I believe. I personally believe in limited government. I believe in fiscal responsibility and personal liberty. I believe that you know best how to live your life and spend your hard-earned money much better than any government bureaucrat does. And I believe that people prosper best when government gets out of the way and lets you live your life. And over the last 2 years, I'm proud of several of the accomplishments I've been able to make as your senator. We worked to lower taxes. We actually passed one of the largest tax cuts in Maine history, lowering the tax burden on Maine people. And you know what? We actually ended up with a surplus at the end of the year. As chairman for the Health and Human Services Committee, I led the effort to reform welfare. A lot of different welfare proposals went through, but one in particular, we finally got something that many advocates of welfare reform have been advocating for a long time, which is finally putting a prohibition in place so that welfare dollars cannot be used for purchases of alcohol and cigarettes and lottery tickets. On the Health and Human Services Committee, I've really worked to try to shift priorities so that those who do not have the capacities to be self-sufficient, our seniors and those with intellectual disabilities and autism, that those individuals are coming first, before able-bodied adults who can be self-sufficient, and certainly before newcomers to Maine who haven't paid into the system. And I've also been a strong advocate for our Second Amendment, protecting our constitutional right to self-defense. So these are some of the accomplishments I've been really proud of these last 2 years. It's been a real pleasure and honor to serve you again these last 2 years, and I hope to continue serving you. And I look forward to taking some of your questions tonight. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here, and for those watching at home.
Thank you, Eric. First of all, are there anybody from the audience that has a question? Stan.
Good evening. Thank you for coming in this evening. I'm sorry? Got to hold it closer. Oh, okay. I'm used to wearing it, not having to hold it. When Mr. LePage was mayor of Waterville, he used a profanity when saying it was not right of the governor to decrease revenue sharing. Now that he is not responsible for a municipal budget, he has cut revenue sharing and wants to stop it completely. Revenue sharing is paid to municipalities through a portion of the sales tax and income taxes. When first introduced, 5% of these taxes were distributed to help municipalities keep down the property tax burden. That has been reduced to 2%. The 60% decrease has a direct impact on local property taxpayers. Do you agree with the governor? If not, what will you do to increase the revenue sharing back to 5% so that we can help decrease our property taxes, or at least maintain them the way they are?
Who first?
Eric, you want to take it first?
I'd be happy to. Well, first let me say I think understanding some of the history of revenue sharing is very important with this. This was actually, revenue sharing came about as part of an agreement that when the state took away the abilities for localities to, when traffic tickets are issued, that we wanted to remove the incentive that those funds go directly into local coffers, so that people aren't issuing tickets just for the purpose of revenue generation. And so revenue sharing was created as part of a compromise to allow for that. So I think that it's very important that we do maintain revenue sharing. I think that's a commitment that was negotiated a while back, and it's important that we maintain that. Though I also think that we should look, we should be open to looking at maybe what does that look like in the future, and might what revenue sharing look like change. Because I think that the purpose of revenue sharing is to help lower and offset people's property taxes. And I think that when it goes directly to municipalities, there are many municipalities that do a very good job using those funds exactly for the purpose that's intended, to lower property taxes. But I also see a lot of municipalities where they get that revenue sharing money, and rather than it going to lower property taxes, it just seems to be used to fund items that couldn't be fit into the budget previously. And so property taxes aren't going down, the budget is just going up. So I would very much like to look at, let's look at maybe taking this revenue sharing money that we have a commitment to the property taxpayers of Maine that it's going to them, and maybe let's look at a way where we can just send it directly back to the property taxpayers themselves and cut out the middleman, so that you get that money back that you've paid in. I think that's a way to maintain revenue sharing, and also a way to really make sure it's being used for the purpose that it's intended, which is lowering people's property taxes.
Thank you. Kimberly?
Listen, we all hate big government, but we do want smart government. And I think I look forward to getting a veto-proof Senate elected into the state Senate, and to work with the Maine Municipal Association to reduce the property taxes that we currently have. I think the current plan that we have is not effective, and it's taxing old folks out of their homes. And right now the AARP and the Maine Municipal Association are both out on the forefront here, working to try to help us reduce the taxes, and I certainly look forward to working with them.
Okay. Another question from the audience?
Hi, thank you for coming. My name is Faye Lupi. I'm a Poland resident for over 30 years now. Senator Brakey, I've been looking at your record over the last couple of years, and it appears that you supported a bill that would, or actually opposed a bill that would have helped to ensure that when the state purchases buying materials, it buys materials made in the United States. Could you explain why you voted against that bill? And then, Kimberly Sampson, could you explain if you would support Buy America legislation?
I'm answer that question because I think that some of us have received negative attack mailers funded by certain special interest groups that have been hitting that exact point. And it's really frustrating to see how sometimes when these special interest funded attack mailers come out, you get just a little piece of the picture and you don't get the whole picture. It's important to understand there were actually two bills being considered. This bill, well, let me say first and foremost, my job as your senator is to help create jobs here in Maine, not in California. And Maine's high taxes are really one of the greatest challenges we have for creating jobs here in Maine. So this bill would have raised costs on all state construction projects by some estimates as much as 20%. That would be raising taxes on Maine people and making job creation even more difficult here in Maine, all to create jobs in California and other parts of the country, and that's happening at the Maine people's expense. So I didn't run to serve the people of California, I ran to serve the people of Maine. So I supported a different bill which would have given preference to Maine businesses when they bid on state contracts. So if they're within 5% of the lowest bid, if it's a Maine business versus an out-of-state business, the Maine business would get that contract. Now that may make some of these contracts cost a little bit more, but at least we would be spending a little bit more to create jobs here in Maine, not to create jobs in California and other parts of the country. But I will say that's just a small piece of what we can do to create jobs here in Maine. Ultimately, I think we really need to recognize that it isn't government that creates jobs in the first place. It's people that create jobs. And we need to unleash the entrepreneurial spirit of Maine people by getting government out of their way. Now, when I talk to Maine business owners, both big and small, these are the difficulties I hear. Taxes are too high, regulations are too onerous, and the high cost of energy makes manufacturing very difficult. So that's why I've supported efforts to tackle all of these issues, including repealing ridiculous regulations that prevent us from utilizing low-cost hydroelectric energy from Canada. That's one thing we could do to help bring energy costs down. But to that particular point, it's important to remember when these special interest funded attack pieces come out, they're only giving you a small piece of the picture. And again, I'm here to create jobs in Maine, not to create jobs in California.
Thank you.
Well, great lead-in, because I've got a bill right here that you were the only person that voted against a bill to create jobs, and it would have created, it was an effort to bring in high-paying jobs that would have produced about, an hourly wage of at least $20 an hour. Listen, Bath Iron Works is going to lose 1,000 jobs within the next couple of months. We know that. We have mills that aren't coming back. We have, jobs that are slow coming, and we need to make sure that we're creating an environment that's welcoming. And I've spoken with Maine and Company, I've spoken with Athena, I've spoken with IDEX, and they're saying this is a great place to be. We have a great opportunity here, and I think we should absolutely promote having American-made American-made products made here. I mean, we can do that. I mean, why not? It seems nonsensical to me. Like I certainly would have supported that.
There was a claim made there. Can I respond to it?
Quickly.
All right. First, I'll say my opponent just referenced a bill that I voted against. This was a bill called the Maine Capital Investment Fund, and I'm proud of the fact I was the only person in the Senate to stand up against this, because this program was a $50 million corporate loan program funded with taxpayer money to out-of-state large businesses to try to attract them to come here to Maine. There's two ways we can create jobs. We can embrace free markets, we can work to lower taxes and create an even playing field for everyone, or we can take taxpayer money from some people and give it to special interests. And I will stand against corporate welfare every time, because that's not a good use of our taxpayer money. The thing to understand is that why in the world would a private business come to government for a loan in the first place? The only reason a private business would be coming to government for a loan is if the private lenders, the banks, the credit unions had already passed over on it and said it was too risky, that they're accountable to their depositors and they could not, they felt it was too risky an investment to make that loan. Well, if the private lenders find it too risky, then there's no reason we should take Maine taxpayer money and put the Maine taxpayers on the hook instead. We have private lenders in our state and in our country for a reason, and the Maine taxpayers should not be the piggy banks of special interests.
Everybody?
Quick rebuttal.
Student loans, the federal government makes $256 billion off of student loans. If the government can make that amount of money off of student loans, then why can't we create those type of opportunities for corporations and make money off of corporations that way and create jobs in that same vein? And it doesn't make sense.
Because student loans, you cannot eliminate them by going bankrupt. Even if you go bankrupt, student loans follow you for the rest of your life. But companies go bankrupt all the time. And we've seen that here in Maine when we've done special loan programs for some of the mills that we went and ended up going out of business anyway, and we lost good taxpayer money going after it.
Okay. Go ahead.
We can create wise investment opportunities. We can create those. We can make sure that they don't have, that there's vision and that there's they're well vetted. We can do that. That's not unreasonable.
Okay. Moving along, we have a question from our television audience. This is from Destiny Romerick. I trust I pronounced your name correctly. I hope I did. With over 1,200 individuals with intellectual disabilities and autism waiting for Maine Care waiver, Section 21 or other services like it, and the number of those in need of these services growing daily, how do you as a legislator propose to support these individuals? You want to start with this one?
Well, yeah, absolutely. For about at least 5 years, I only worked with special needs children. It was primarily autistic children or that were on the PDD spectrum. So I am very familiar with their concerns and needs. And in that vein, the Affordable Care Act has many opportunities for them. And again, the Affordable Care Act, if we accepted those dollars, we'd have about 3,000 to 4,000 jobs. So that is money that would be immediately available, and we could certainly go ahead and help those families.
Okay. Eric?
Well, I'm really happy to be able to talk about this because this is something that has been very near and dear to my heart working on the Health and Human Services Committees for the last 2 years. Yeah, it really is. It's a matter of priorities. I really strongly feel that our top priorities when it comes to our social safety net should be those individuals who are in a position, through no fault of their own, where they do not have the full physical or mental capacities to be self-sufficient, like our seniors, like those with intellectual disabilities and autism. And it is absolutely shameful that we have had a $100 million wait list for these programs. I mean, these are the cases of people who are the most severely in need. I mean, these are the people that, you hit adulthood, and then parents are struggling taking care of their adult children with severe intellectual disabilities, and the wait list can go on for years. Now in the budget proposal that came to us, actually from the governor, those wait lists were completely paid off, but it was paid for by spending cuts to other areas that were not as high priorities. But it turns out in Augusta that every single spending line in the budget, everyone has a special interest group and someone with a handout who's asking for it. So you try to cut a penny here, and it's very difficult. But we did reduce those wait lists, so they're down to 70 now, and we have 70 million now, and we have a lot more ways to go. A matter of setting priorities. Are those with intellectual disabilities, our seniors, those need to be our top priorities. Not people just arriving in Maine and signing up for the welfare rolls, not able-bodied adults, particularly when they are capable of work and don't have dependents. Our seniors and those with disabilities need to be our #1 priority.
Can I respond? Thank you. So then can you please explain why you actually opposed Representative Stuckey's bill this session providing funding for people with disabilities?
Okay. Can I ask a question to you as the moderator? Are we asking questions to each other now? I mean, I'm happy to respond to that, but I didn't realize that was part of the format.
Well, it's not technically part of the format, correct, but...
Okay, I'm happy to respond to that. So there was a bill that my opponent references. So there's two sections of Maine Care that cover these areas. You've got Section 21. Section 21, there is an individual assessment of the individual needs of every person under that program. And then you have a different section of Maine Care where there's no assessment, but people get up to a certain cap. Ultimately, we need to be transitioning adults with intellectual disabilities. Everyone should be in the Section 21 program where they get an individualized assessment of what their individual needs are, and then they get a budget based on that assessment. The bill my opponent referenced would just increase spending caps when there's no assessment done and we're not catering the program to a person's individual needs. So I've supported more funding for the Section 21 wait lists. And I want to see us fully fund those wait lists because that's where people should be. That's where people are getting exactly what they need tailored to their exact situation.
Great. Any questions from the audience? Yes, sir.
Thank you. Eric, one of the things that I'm listening to...
Excuse me, would you introduce yourself?
I'm sorry. Richard Haslip, and I live here in Poland. And one of the things I'm listening to is it sounds to me like you're actually running for a state job and a state position where you have these grandiose ideas where you can do all these things with the budget and do all of these things on a statewide basis. And I have yet to hear you tonight mention anything that you're going to do specifically for our district, or specifically even more for the people of Poland. One of the things that you have done that failed was overlooking the safety and well-being of our residents here by trying to repeal the seatbelt law. Another failure was about your clean election law. Unfortunately, that didn't pass either. So there's a lot of things that you're trying to do on a statewide basis, but yet I have yet to hear anything that you have done for the residents of Poland. One of the things that you did talk about was some of the issues surrounding health care. But yet the government turned down millions of dollars in federal funding that would have helped alleviate a lot of these problems with people who are in great need. And I can attest to the fact that the rising costs of health care and the money that's cost in the treatment that I've had to go through for cancer and some of the worries that people have surrounding the potential bankruptcy and foreclosure of their properties just based on health care doesn't ring for what you're trying to say. So I'd like to have you answer a couple questions about what you're really trying to do for the people of our district. And then Kimberly, if you would follow that as well.
Okay. So to fully answer everything there, I'll need like a good half an hour. So I assume I did not get that amount of time. No, but there's a lot of things packed in there. Well, first of all, let me say, as I talk to people in the district, lowering people's taxes, reforming welfare, making Maine a better place to create jobs, supporting services for our seniors. I mean, yes, these are things for that help support people in the entire state. But that also certainly benefits people here in Poland and in the rest of the district. So I simply don't understand the idea that reforming welfare and lowering taxes and creating jobs is not for the people of Poland. When I go door to door, 2 years ago, I knocked on close to 8,000 doors across the entire district, talking to people directly about what their concerns were and what they wanted to see happen. And this go around, I've done it again. I've knocked on thousands of doors, and I'm hearing these same things. People are tired of seeing their tax dollars wasted on welfare abuse. People are tired of having some of the highest taxes in the country and seeing that drive jobs and our young children after they graduate school and seeing all of our seniors who have 2 pennies to rub together move into Florida so they can avoid the taxes here. So those are things that certainly affect people in our district. And you know, there were a lot of things in there. I mean, I'll say, you know, one thing that you brought up was clean elections. Well, first of all, let me say, you know, I sponsored probably about 20 different individual bills my first year there. I was very ambitious. And a lot of those bills came directly from constituent requests. People who brought them to me said, here's a problem I have. I'd like to see us do something there. And we've had a lot of successes. Of course, when you bring up issues that sometimes you bring up an issue so that you start a conversation on something. I brought up a criminal justice reform bill around the problems we have with overcrowding of the Androscoggin County Jail and all the jails across the state because of pretrial. You have people there sitting pre-trial. They can't come up with $50 bail, and yet we have them there day after day after day waiting for trial at a cost of $100 a day to taxpayers. I put in a bill that started a conversation there. We had even the Chief Justice of the Maine Supreme Court, after we started that conversation, addressed the entire legislature about it, and reforms have been happening. So whether or not a particular bill happens to go through and pass and become law, that doesn't mean that that starting a conversation about something is unproductive. But let me say elsewhere. So I sponsored welfare reform that was passed. I sponsored a bill that was very near and dear to my heart called Right to Try, allowing terminally ill patients who have exhausted all the approved FDA treatments, allowing them to have the opportunity to try things that aren't yet approved by the FDA. We've had a lot of successes there, so much that, you know, Portland Press Herald of all papers, who's not a fan of mine by any stretch of the imagination, they called me the Rookie of the Year for everything I was able to get done. So there's so many things I could unpack there. I see I'm out of time. I would be, if you would like offline, I'd be happy to talk more with you about it, Richard, and I hope you're in good health. It's good to see you again.
Kimberly?
Richard, first of all, let me just say that I'm sorry that you were one of the many Americans and many Mainers who's been dealing with cancer. I'm sorry for that. You asked specifically about the seatbelt law. Listen, I don't care if people don't want to wear seatbelts. What I have a problem with is when people get into an accident and they are uninsured and they all of a sudden need to go into the emergency room and they rack up $15,000 worth of medical expenses per day. That's what I have a problem with. And I think it's a poor use of taxpayer resources when we are paying for those type of incidents. And so as a result, I would have supported a seatbelt law that is widely recognized as being smart, and it, quite frankly, was going to cost us $500,000 worth in federal fund, or we were going to lose $500,000 worth of federal funding because of our lack of compliance with that bill. So I think it was a foolish bill. I don't quite understand that reasoning on that. And second of all, I am a clean election candidate. I am very proud of that fact. I am proud of the fact that I'm honoring the will of the people who in 2000 voted for the Clean Elections Act. The other thing that you talked about was the, a little bit about the ACA funding, and I certainly support the ACA funding, and I would not have cut the $30 million in mental health services, because I think this area in particular is dealing with a lot of drug epidemic issues, and we as a state, we have some real mental health issues that we need to destigmatize and work through. You know, we're not going to arrest our way out of the opioid epidemic, and we need to really tap those federal resources. And I'm really glad he did bring up the Right to Try bill. You know, one of the reasons I'm running is I am running for my patients. At the end of the day, win or lose, I need to make sure I can look my patients straight in the eyes and know that I did everything I could. And that bill, it's pandering to politicians at their finest, because it's a bill that maybe sounds great, but it has absolutely no bite, and it's not going to help my patients. And it's theatrics at taxpayers' expense, and I find that appalling. And I actually spoke with a bioethicist today on that bill, and she's like, it's just, it sounds good in theory. We all want to help somebody who's terminal, but the reality is there's never going to be a physician who puts their DEA license on the line. Even if you can get around an FDA regulation, you're not going to have a physician put their DEA license on the line. It's just not going to happen.
Okay, Eric, I'll let you do a quick rebuttal.
Right. First, let me say on Right to Try, I'd like someone to talk to someone suffering from ALS who has exhausted every single FDA-approved treatment available to them. And there are treatments going through the FDA approval process that it takes 10 years to complete that approval process. And, you know, it was folks with ALS who were encouraging passage of this. And since Texas passed it, they passed it a few years ahead of us. There are cancer patients in Texas right now suffering with rare forms of cancer who are being helped by who are getting treatment because of Right to Try right now. This is a bipartisan accomplishment we accomplished. You know, my colleague on the Health and Human Services Committee, Democrat Representative Drew Gattine, this is something we actually got Republicans and Democrats to come together and accomplish. We became the first in New England and the 25th in the country, and there are people across the country who are real lives are being saved right now because of this law. And I'll just say on clean elections, you know, look, if you want to see tens of thousands of dollars of your taxpayer money spent on robocalls and junk mail coming into your mailbox, you know, and you'd rather see that being spent there than to help our seniors and to support those with intellectual disabilities and autism, you know, I think this is one of the most wasteful government programs there is. You know, this is welfare for politicians. You know, because, you know, as I mentioned, the attack mailers coming into this race already. You know, there are attack mailers coming into this race attacking me. You know, my opponent is proud clean elections candidate. She's not taking special interest money, but geez, the special interests sure seem to be spending money to support her. So the idea it's kind of this shuffle game. You know, there's. All right, am I out of time?
You're out of time.
All right.
Okay, yeah, just
Can
a
I
quick
respond?
response.
You know, yesterday was we actually had some time to go over our budget, and we had to file our clean election paperwork. And while we were doing that, my treasurer and I were looking at our funds. First of all, he's got double the budget that I have, and everything we post is very clean. We can see who our donors are. And Mary Mayhew is one of his donors. I'm sorry, but if anybody's special interest, you know, it's Mary Mayhew, it's bankers, it's you know, gamblers, it's, you know, huge law firms that are lobbying. That's who your sponsors are. You know, NRA, you know, I am loyal to you, I'm beholden to you. And I like that. I like that. Every time I get a $5 check, for me, that is a honor commitment. I need to pick up the phone and say thank you. And you know, I write a thank you note. I like that. And I don't want out-of-state money polluting our political landscape.
I have hundreds of individual donors, regular people. The most common contributions to my campaign come from regular people here in Maine chipping in $25, $50, $75. Why? Because they believe in what I'm advocating for. And you know, the sad thing is the special interest money, it still comes into politics. But rather than being able to look up a particular candidate and see which special interests are supporting them, it goes into the PACs, into the political parties, and it becomes even less transparent. And this is what taxpayer financed political campaigns is doing to us. It's raising the bar on actually how much it costs to be involved in politics, and it's making things less transparent. And we could be using this money to support our seniors. We could be using this money to support individuals with intellectual disabilities. We're talking about millions of dollars every election cycle.
Okay. All right. Let's move on to a less volatile discussion here. What are your thoughts on question 3? Kimberly.
You're going to go right to me? Let him go. So, listen, hey, we all, you know, my cousin went hunting today, and he sent back a picture, and he's proud of his 600-and-something pound moose, and he's like, admittedly, he's like, it's a baby. He's like, but, you know, they're all very proud of it. Listen, we all have, it's a Maine hunting tradition, and I can appreciate that. You know, my brother and I have gone skeet shooting, and for the record, I am a very good shot. I want the record to reflect that. Nevertheless, we have a real problem in Maine. 1 in 3 individuals, 1 in 3 women and 1 in 4 men are victims of domestic violence. We also have a major gun trafficking issue here in Maine. We also have a very high rate of mental illness that, you know, there's a lot of volatile people, you know, and we need to make sure we're addressing that. We have an opioid addiction. We need to make sure that we're addressing that. And it's, I don't care if people want to have guns. What I have a problem with is that we have people who shouldn't have guns and who are irresponsible gun owners. And we need to make sure that we, support gun owners in our hunting tradition, but also prevent reckless use. And because of that, I'm proud to join the Maine Sheriff's Association and stand with them. I think that reasonable minds recognize that we need to have background checks. I mean, that's common sense,
Eric?
Well, first I'll say it's news to me that the Maine Sheriff's Association is supporting this, because I know our own county sheriff, a Democrat, Sheriff Eric Sampson, has actually come out publicly opposed to Question 3. And there's some real problems in Question 3 that we should all understand. Because it's not just about, first thing to understand is that when we talk about background checks, first thing to understand is if you go to a licensed firearm dealer, you are already subject to a background check. One of the things to understand is this, Question 3 is also about transfers of firearms. So imagine for a moment that your next door neighbor, who you've known for 20 years, good friend of yours, great guy, he's going hunting tomorrow. He asks if he can borrow your rifle. And so you loan your rifle to him, and he gives it back to you when he's done. Well, the both of you just committed a very serious crime under Question 3. In fact, you could both go to jail and potentially face a felony and lose your gun rights for the rest of your life. Because what Question 3 would require you to do in that circumstance is you got to go to a licensed firearm dealer. You have to pay for a background check on your neighbor to loan the firearm to him. Then when you come, when he's done with it, you have to go back to that licensed firearm dealer and pay for a background check on yourself in order to get your own firearm back. Now, some people might point to there's an exception that's supposedly there in Question 3 for hunting, but it's so narrowly defined. You have to physically be on the hunting grounds with the person you're loaning it to and take it back before you leave. So there's a lot of people, regular innocent Maine people who are gonna walk into this not realizing they're committing a serious crime, and they could really get in serious trouble. So I don't support Question 3, and I think it asks a larger question. We look at all of these gun control initiatives that have been pushed across the country, and what has the success rate been? I mean, here in Maine, we have some of the strongest Second Amendment protections in the country, and we are actually also one of the safest states in the country. We actually are the #1 state for the lowest amount of assaults per capita in the country. And you go to places like Chicago and Washington, D.C., where these are the gun control capitals of America, and that's where you see all the violent crime happening, because gun control has not worked. It's only disarmed the law-abiding citizens, and it's empowered the criminals in other places.
This will have to be the last question for this one.
Thank you, Stan Tetman. I've got to ask a follow-up question on this, Eric, and it kind of ties into the clean elections also.
Mm-hmm.
That I'm going on a limb here because I have no idea who you've gotten money from, but I'm going to make an assumption that you've gotten money or you're getting backing from NRA. And when you say that that trying to keep the money out of the clean elections, that it's a cleaner way to do it, but when you start taking money from any special interest, you become obligated to them, and if you don't, then I think the people that are giving you the money aren't too bright. But in the meantime, one of the arguments on this bill, on number 3, it seems though whenever anything is proposed that the NRA opposes it completely, and then you've got people such as yourself who claim to always be protecting the Second Amendment opposing anything. Very clean bill. Would you support a bill that would require background checks for all sales, none of forget the transfers or anything like that, and also to prevent sales to anybody that's on a no-fly list? Clean bill. Those two things. Yes or no? Pretty simple answer.
Me first? Well, first let me say, I agree with the ACLU on this one, which is that the no-fly list is a terrible way as a basis to take people's rights away. Because as the New York Times even wrote during the Bush administration, there are individuals on the no-fly list who, there's a 6-year-old on the no-fly list. There are people who have no idea how they've ended up on the no-fly list, and there is no administrative process, there's no appeal process for them to get off the no-fly list. You know, this is something, you know, I've been a huge critic of the Bush administration back in the days for some of this stuff, eroding people's civil liberties there. So no, I wouldn't use the no-fly list as a basis for taking people's rights away. I think that you can have your rights taken away, including your Second Amendment right, including your right to walk around and live your life, if you've committed a crime, and you have due process afforded to you, and you're proven guilty in a court of law. That's the standard that our founders set up for us. That's what makes America such a great nation, is you're innocent until proven guilty. Your rights cannot be taken away from you unless you're proven guilty in a court of law and you have your due process rights afforded to you. Now, I have to respond to one other thing you said there. Look, I am proud to be a traditionally financed candidate. I'm proud to go to people who believe in me and want to support me. And you know what? I've lost donors because they wanted me to vote a particular way, and I thought it was wrong. I've lost donors. There was a bill around nurse anesthetists, allowing nurse anesthetists to have more ability to do some things than they're currently licensed and allowed to do. I had some donors who were anesthesiologists who didn't like that I voted that way. But you know what? I read the bill. I looked at the bill. I thought it was the right thing to do. And here in Maine, people should also understand the contribution limits are so low here in Maine. The maximum anyone can contribute to a traditionally financed candidate is $375. I'm sorry, but if your vote can be bought for $375, you're a really cheap date.
But going back to background checks for all sales, when somebody sells a gun privately, and we'll just leave it at that part of it, is selling privately, how do they know that that person they're selling to, or being sold at a gun show, that person they're selling to isn't one of these problem people, forget the no-fly list, but just somebody who shouldn't be buying a gun? Why would you not back background checks for all gun sales in the state of Maine?
So I think one of the questions to ask there in response is, do background checks work? I mean, so how do you know that someone's not that someone's not a prohibited person? Well, how do you know that someone isn't buying a firearm for someone who's a prohibited person? That's a problem we see in states with strict background check laws. This is something you can look up the FBI reports. This is something that happens all the time. The thing is, it's so easy for criminals to sidestep these laws. They go around the laws. The criminals don't care if they can't pass a background check. They don't care if they don't have a permit. They don't care if there's a gun-free zone sign up. The criminals are more than happy to go around the law, and it's us law-abiding citizens, those of us who have respect for the law, who get stuck dealing with these consequences. These gun control laws have not been effective in stopping criminals from getting access to firearms. It's just made it more difficult for law-abiding citizens.
Okay, Kimberly.
First of all, there's a lot there, but first of all, if you are on a do not fly list, the government has flagged you as being a person of interest, and they have a reasonable articulable suspicion to investigate you. They have that. That's part of the due process analysis there. So for me, yes, absolutely. If somebody's on a do not fly list, that is common sense. They should absolutely have a background check. Beyond that, you know, a couple months ago, I've had 2 officers in my life who were slain, and I've lost 2 other acquaintances, one of which is my brother's roommate, through gun violence. And the issue is near and dear to me. And one of the ways that my friend's husband was killed in the line of duty was that it was a criminal in Massachusetts who very likely came up to Maine and purchased a weapon and went down to Massachusetts, and it was a routine stop. And her husband got out and was shot while he was trying to investigate the driver that he pulled over. You know, my uncle is a sheriff around this town, Dennis Sampson. I think many of you know him. And we are so proud of him, and we're so proud of the work that he does, but it is a very real risk when he's putting his life on the line every day, and we do wonder, and we are concerned, and I think we owe it to our officers to put those common sense, regulations in place. So.
Very good. I want to thank you both for coming.
All right.
Well, thank you, and thank you guys for your questions. Those were all great.
Great. Wish you luck.
All right.
Very much.
Thank you very much, Randy.
We'll now call to the table House District 65, Elijah Breton, and Kelly Espling. Eric will be reading her statement.
My mic off too.
Excuse me.
Nope. Elijah, I'm going to hurry you. All right. Is there a certain place should...
I don't know, wherever it'll work.
Does that work? Hope that works.
Are we all set with this mic?
All set.
Okay, great.
Great. Thank you.
Would you like to start, sir?
Sure.
Okay.
All right, great. Well, good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for attending. Thank you to the town of Poland for putting this on. It's a great honor to have this opportunity. My name is Elijah Breton. I am a Poland resident, born and raised right here, and again, it's just such an honor to have an opportunity to have a chance to represent a town that I grew up in, and knocking on doors and seeing so many familiar faces. It's just an amazing opportunity. And so a little bit about myself. Again, as I said, born and raised right here in Poland. So went right from Poland Community School to Bruce Whittier to Poland Regional, and I am a recent graduate of Ithaca College in New York. I graduated with a Communication Studies, Sports Studies double major. And for me, I'm running because first I come from a family of hard workers. My grandfather came from Canada, and not knowing much of the English language, he worked hard and worked his way up to be an assistant plant factory manager, and he passed along his values to my mother and her siblings, and that has been passed down to me. And growing up, for part of my life, I was brought up in a single-parent family household. My mother worked part-time, and for me, I understand what it means to have to stretch the budget. I understand what it means to have to go through hard times, to make hard choices with your budget, and I'm someone who I can really relate to a lot of you out in the audience and those who are watching on TV right now, because I feel as though Augusta has left too many of us behind, and they have been for a while, and we need to get back to serving the people that matter most here in Poland and New Gloucester and in the entire state, for that matter. I'm running because it's pretty clear to me, in knocking on doors and just talking with so many people, that we need younger, fresher representatives in Augusta. For so long, we've gotten older, and we need to get younger, because I want to be a part of Maine solutions. I want to be part of what makes Maine work for not only the short term, but long term, because as someone who's young, there isn't a whole lot for young people right now in Maine, and we've got to solve that. We've got to find solutions for that. I'm running because I just believe that we have to work with smaller businesses. We have to work to improve our economic development. We've dropped the ball on that. I'm running because I'm tired of the status quo. I'm tired of the establishment politics. I'm tired of all the special interests
essentially influencing a lot of our legislators, like my opponent, Ellie Espling, and I can touch up upon that later. But the reality is we need people in Augusta who are fiscally conservative and who will actually represent you, the people, and a lot of that starts with just being right here at this forum, right? My opponent couldn't be bothered to be here, and my schedule was very open, and she had every opportunity to work with Susie, who did a great job of organizing this, and we could have had an alternative time, and I would have been more than happy to do that. But I hope that when you go to the polls, that you at least consider the fact that I bothered to be here. I made a commitment to be here. And so with that, I look forward to hearing your questions and having an opportunity to hopefully serve you for the next few years.
Great. Thank you. Eric.
Everyone thought they were done with me, but no. Representative Ellie Espling had asked, since I was going to be here tonight, if I would read a prepared statement for her because she had a scheduling conflict that because we're doing all the candidates all at the same time, she wasn't able to be here on the night it was scheduled. So, dear friends and neighbors, I'm sorry that I'm unable to attend the forum tonight. Due to a scheduling conflict, I am unable to participate in tonight's Poland Candidates Forum. To be fair to all the good folks of Poland and New Gloucester, I decided not to participate in any forum. I feel the opportunity should be there for all the people of the district to ask or submit questions. I regret that this did not work out as I have participated in forums in the past. I've had the honor and the privilege of being elected as this area's state representative for 3 terms. When I was first elected in 2010, the district was comprised of all of New Gloucester, all of Durham, and part of Lisbon. Due to the census, districts were redrawn, and in 2014 I was elected as the state representative for all of New Gloucester and part of Poland. I was born and raised in Maine except for a 2-year period when my father went active duty in the Navy and we were stationed in California. I graduated from Maine Public School and went on to graduate from the University of Southern Maine. My husband and I have chosen to remain in Maine and raise our 4 children, 2 of whom are now in college. While serving in the legislature, I served on the Inland Fisheries and Wildlife Committee for 2 terms, making land user relations a priority. I continue to support Maine's sportsmen and women because Maine's outdoor heritage is important to so many of us. In 2014, I was also elected by my peers to serve as the Assistant House Republican Leader. In this role, I am the only Republican woman in leadership in Augusta. I have a reputation with my colleagues, both Democrat and Republican, for having a very balanced approach to the issues. Since being elected in 2010, we have had many accomplishments as a state, and I am proud of to have been able to be this district's voice in getting things done. We paid off a huge debt to Maine's hospitals. We tackled the very difficult issue of Maine's unfunded pension liability to assure future seniors that their retirement dollars will be there when they need it. We have lowered the income tax several times, giving Mainers some of the largest tax decreases in history. We removed military pensions from the income tax. We passed a comprehensive bipartisan package of laws helping Maine veterans. We continue to reform Maine's welfare system to ensure that Maine's neediest individuals get the assistance they need. I could go on. Much of the work done by the legislature is done in a bipartisan, unanimous fashion, but the things we agree on do not often make it in the news. My favorite part of being a state rep involves helping people in the district with issues they may have in dealing with state government. I also believe my role is to help you bring your ideas to Augusta, and I have been able to help many residents present legislation and testify before committees. I want to help you access your government. While I am not able to participate in this forum, I look forward to talking with you by phone, email, or in person. I look forward to your input, and I can be reached by phone at 207-891-8280 or email at espling2@securespeed.us or on Facebook at Ellie Espling. Thank you for your consideration as we move towards Election Day, November 8th. With sincere appreciation, Ellie Espling. And with that, I'll excuse myself from the table.
Thank you very much, Eric.
Thank you.
Open up to the floor for questions. All right.
Thank you. Stan Tetman. First, I'd like to say I'm disappointed that Ellie's not here. I understand that there are scheduling conflicts. My understanding is that when she was called, she didn't say anything that she wouldn't be able to make it because at that point she was the first one called. This date could have been changed. I'm also disappointed that she's not going to appear at the one in New Gloucester. It's the only chance that we'd have to see the two candidates side by side and have a nice open discussion as we just saw with Eric and Kim. And, that I think I would urge, I would urge her to change her mind on that and reach out to the people in Poland and explain you couldn't make it to this program, but everyone please come to the one in New Gloucester so that we could get her opinions. For Elijah, do you believe that health care is a basic right? Are you for or against expanding Medicaid health insurance to those who cannot afford it, providing we receive 100% reimbursement under the Affordable Health Care Act, recognizing that reimbursement will be decreased to 90%? Please explain your reasons whether you're for or opposed to this.
Well, thank you for your question. I'll address your first part of the question or comment. The New Gloucester Forum has actually already occurred, and Ellie did not attend that forum. So just want to make sure that people don't expect the New Gloucester one to be upcoming. To answer your question, yes, I do believe healthcare is fundamental, and I would be in favor of that with that 100% reimbursement because the reality is just if we looked at our district and the demographics of our district, and we're an older district, and so many seniors I've spoken to cannot afford to be able to continue to live in a healthy fashion and manner. And so for me, it's common sense to do it. And so that's something that I would be in favor of, and it needs to happen.
Other questions?
To see you back in Poland. Can you tell us what you think the most important issue is that you've heard from people knocking on doors and how you would address that?
Yeah. Thank you for your question. I think for me the most important issue is our economic development. It's job creation, and a lot of that, to me, I'm a believer that we need to work with small businesses because I'm a believer that small businesses should be the backbone of our economy. And right now, the tax rate for smaller businesses is one of the highest in the nation, and we need to work on reducing that so that way we can create better jobs and generate more revenue for our economy. Additionally, I'm a believer that we need to go back to funding more and investing in more vocational education services, because the reality is, just from my own experience graduating with students from Poland Regional High School, a lot of those students there, and even in Maine, are hands-on learners. And the reality is we will always need plumbers, electricians, and I'm a believer that if we can get more people to have more trades, that's where the jobs are going to be in Maine, and that's where we need to push towards. And I also think that in terms of manufacturing, we've got to invest in manufacturing. So in my opinion, we need to manufacture more clean, renewable energy. I believe that that's an important thing, considering the paper mills they're going away, and I'm not so sure that they will be coming back. And we need to push to create more jobs on that front.
Very good. Anyone else?
Eli Murphy, Poland resident, young like Elijah. I have a question. You were mentioning earlier about trying to get into Augusta as a young person, and as you were saying, as a clean elections candidate. What has really been the hardest part about that, seeing how we've had, especially with our Senate forum, there was a lot of that heated discussion over clean elections?
So I guess this is a two-part answer. In terms of the clean elections, I will say this. I'm going to address what Senator Brakey had to say about clean elections. In my opinion, to say that the Clean Elections Act system is candidates' welfare is incredibly disrespectful to those who are running as a Clean Elections Act candidate, and here's why. It is you, the people, who donate into that fund. It is you, the people, who make that $5 donation. So to sit here and say that it's candidates' welfare is really, it should be insulting to all of you folks. And I will also say that I refuse to sell out to special interests. Unlike my opponent, who has accepted a $50,000 contribution from one man in Florida to her PAC, $50,000 is far more than what a lot of people in our district make in 1 year. Additionally, she, before the LD 1649 bill, her PAC accepted a contribution from Sunrun, who was against the bill, and she subsequently voted against the bill. So I'm not about that. I don't believe in selling yourself out. And regardless of how you feel about clean, renewable energy, it's the principle that applies. And in terms of just being a younger person, and it doesn't even have to, it's not even so much about being a younger person. Unfortunately, I've had to deal with a lot of race issues, and I never wanted this to ever be about race, but the reality is that there are some people within our district who have taken it upon themselves to refer to me as incredibly disrespectful comments such as little face monkey boy, and for me, my job is trying to knock on doors and to try to present myself as a candidate who will make a difference, as a young person who wants to make a difference, who's passionate about giving back to the community. And I'm just trying to make sure that if these people who unfortunately I know are Ellie's supporters, and this is not against Ellie, this is not an indictment against her, because it was not her who said this, although I would hope that she would condemn those comments. It's the reality that I've got to overcome that and present myself as something more than my skin color. And it's unfortunate that right now, in 2016, that we have to deal with this. But you know what? It is what it is, and I have the thick skin to deal with racism, and I'm going about business as usual.
I will address this question from Destiny to you. With over 1,200 individuals with intellectual disabilities and autism waiting for the Maine Care Waiver, Section 21, and other services like it, and the number of those in need of these services growing daily, how do you as a legislator propose to support these individuals?
Yeah, look, I've always viewed myself as a fiscally conservative individual coming from my background. But mental services is something that we just have to fund. We have a big mental health issue in Maine and in the United States, and we've got to fund and give the resources needed and necessary to make sure that we're all healthy, because a healthy Maine means a healthier economy, means that we're just doing better overall, and we just have to give those resources necessary, and it's vital. It just really is.
Okay. Any other questions from the audience?
Hello. My name is Susan Lee. I just had a question, and I know you said you're fiscal conservative, but I was wondering how you might tackle the question that back in 2003, there was a referendum in the state that said that education would be subsidized 55% by the state. That hasn't happened. It got close once, but it's dropped back down.
Right.
And I know that we need an educated public. I'm a retired teacher, and if the state were at 55%, it certainly would help Poland taxpayers also.
Yeah. Yeah, I support this referendum question on education. I think, and I'm a little frustrated with the referendum question, and here's why. We didn't hold the state of Maine accountable for continuing to, well, and we never even met the 55%, as you said, and even though we got close, it's still not good enough. And so with it, because there's been such a long period of time where we never held the state accountable to make sure that we were meeting that 55%. And so this tax on this referendum question is something that could have gone to a totally different resource if need be, if we had held the state accountable. So look, I'm in favor of it, but of this referendum question on education, but I'm in favor of it with that caveat that we didn't do a good enough of a job previously, and this is I don't want to say it's a wasted tax, but in a sense, in some sort of way, it's almost a wasted referendum question because, again, this tax could have been used on something else.
Okay. Any other questions? I'll throw this one to you then. What are your thoughts on question 3?
Yeah. So, for me, I will be voting no, and my reasoning is that if I'm going to stick to my principles, which is that I don't believe in out-of-state money, I don't believe in those special interests, the reality is, in this case, Michael Bloomberg has funded millions of dollars to support Yes on 3. And it's not that I wouldn't ever be in favor of background checks, but to me right now it doesn't seem like this has been a Maine organically raised issue. And that's my concern. If this were, and I realize that over 80,000 Mainers signed the petition, but some of that was done through advertising and whatnot, through the millions of dollars that Michael Bloomberg has funded. So my concern is that this isn't truly an organically Maine-driven referendum question. And so if I'm going to sit here and really tell you all that I have an issue with out-of-state interests, then I really cannot support Yes on 3. And look, you can. I know that this is such a hot-button issue and topic for people, but again, I've got to stick to my principles, and my principles are that I do not believe in out-of-state interests.
Good.
This is Faye Lupe again. Elijah, I have to ask you to consider the following, and not necessarily to answer now, but to please consider it. As some of you know, I work in the domestic violence field. I have for the last 20 years. The Homicide Review Panel report just came out that looks in depth at the homicides over the past 2 years that involved domestic violence. Over half of these involve firearms. Now, Senator Brakey told us that, Maine's a very safe state. We don't need this. Well, for the past 20 years, almost every year, domestic violence homicides have constituted 50% of the homicides. And of those, almost every year, at least half or more have happened with a firearm. So it's very important to the people I work with and to the victims of domestic violence. Maine is 9th in the nation in terms of domestic violence homicides. That people who are prohibited from buying a firearm or possessing a firearm because of a domestic violence conviction and because of a protection order, that we have some way to find out who those people are when they go to a gun show or go to a private cellar in Uncle Henry's and then use that firearm against an intimate partner. Because Maine may be a very safe state, but unfortunately it's our homes that aren't safe for domestic violence victims. And firearms play a very important role in that, in making those victims, making it lethal. The states that have adopted background checks similar to those back in question 3, 48% fewer victims of domestic violence die due to firearm violence. So I just would ask you to consider that.
Yeah. And look, again, it's not that I'm against the idea of background checks. Again, I really have an issue with the amount of money that's being poured in from the advertising, and so based on that, I struggle with all of those out-of-state interests.
Very good.
Mr. Breton, Arthur Berry, when you look at the bill on that question, if you look at the whole bill, if there was just the plain background check when you buy a firearm is fine, but what they do is they tack on to this legislation.
All right, hold that mic closer.
Oh. I'm telling other people to do that. So what they do is they tack on all of these other things along with the bill. So if you pass the bill, you have to pass along the other garbage with it. So can you explain what it's not just a background check, it's other things, is that correct?
Yeah, there are other things, and I think that there are some, I guess, lack of a better term, there is some red tape that I know that a lot of people are not comfortable with in terms of the amount that they would have to pay to a potential gun shop for a background check and whatnot. And so I do understand some of those concerns as well.
Very good. Thank you very much. Filled out the time. Thank you for being with us. Thank you. And now House District 66. Jessica Fay and Michael McClellan. It's up to you. Wherever you land, I'll put your sign.
I'll be Eric Brakey.
You'll be Eric. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Oh, no. I have a place to stick the microphone.
All right, Jessica, ladies first.
Oh, no, I defer.
Okay.
Okay.
No, I'll go first. First, I'd like to thank Susie and the Friends of the Ricker Library for organizing this forum. I know it's really challenging to try to get so many candidates in one place at one time, so thank you for that. My name's Jessica Fay, and I'm running for to be your state representative in Poland, Raymond, and Casco. And I'm running because of my mom. I was raised in a family that believes that right-sized government is necessary to a civil society. My family has a multi-generational history of public service, elected, civil, military, volunteer. 2 years ago, she almost died during a heart surgery, and over the 3 months that she spent in the hospital, I learned how important advocacy is. An advocate can amplify and clarify our voice. As the owner of a small business, I understand that we need to do more to encourage Maine businesses and entrepreneurs to grow and create good-paying jobs. Local businesses are more connected to their communities. They're more likely to stay in Maine. And I would like to be an advocate for Maine small businesses. We all need a voice in government. We deserve a representative that will work hard and understands that while we should be guided by our beliefs, the job requires compromise. Government does not function when our lawmakers take a my way or the highway mentality. It's not about being right, it's about doing what's right. I'm running to be your representative in the legislature. I'm not a politician. I'm a small business person with a passion for our community. So a forum like this is new to me, and I'm looking forward to our conversation. So thanks for having me.
You did well.
Oh, thank you.
Good evening. I'm Mike McClellan, and I'm your neighbor. I live in Raymond, Maine. I am also running for House Seat 66, which is actually parts of Raymond, Casco, and Poland.
And sadly, I'm a New Yorker, although I've gone past halfway part of my life living in Maine. And I moved to Raymond in '87, and I went to this thing called the town meeting, which we don't do in New York. And I caught the bug. It was incredible. I like politics. I caught the bug. And so I got involved. My wife is an educator, and she was a special ed teacher. Now she's an assistant superintendent in Auburn. And so she encouraged me to get involved in our school system. So I've spent 6 years until my kids actually asked me to stop coming to school. For both Maggie and Pat, spent time in the schools, and I caught the bug there too. As I mentioned, my wife is Michelle. My kids are Maggie and Pat. And my job, because I actually do have a job, is I'm the executive director of the Maine Statewide Independent Living Council, which is an advocacy group for people with disabilities. So I've loved hearing the questions tonight about people with disabilities. Big advocate for that. Getting back to moving to town meeting, I caught the bug. I've been a select person. I've been on the school board a couple times. I actually chaired in Raymond when we built a school building. I've been on all kinds of committees like recycling and this and that, and it's just kind of the way people do it. And as I look in the audience, a lot of you people are the same. That's what we do. We volunteer, we get involved. So this is the fourth time I'm before you to run for this seat, and yet I don't feel like I'm a politician either. I feel like I go up and I represent you folks. One of the things I developed is I communicate weekly with all three of my towns, and I've been doing that for 6 years. The town manager every week hears from me. I hear back from them. I think they split it to the select board as well. Locally, I'm on the board of the Root Cellar, which is an organization that works with people. It used to work with the poorest people in Maine. Now that tends to be immigrants, not always, but usually. Locations in Portland and also in Lewiston, which I kind of go more so. And I also, I guess finally, I belong to the Mechanic Falls Vineyard Church, very active there. It's an awesome church. And I thank the Ricker Library folks as well for tonight.
Great.
Yeah.
Open up for questions.
Hi, thanks very much for coming.
Hi.
It's really great to have face-to-face with our representatives, even if you do live in another town.
Hold that mic closer to you.
I'm almost eating it. Okay. My name is Don Stover, and I live here in Poland. One of my interests, and an interest of a lot of citizens in all three of your towns, is in conservation. And in all three towns, conservation committees or commissions have accomplished a tremendous amount. Most of us are also interested in conservation statewide. So I'd really like to hear from you some of your feelings about some of those statewide issues. I think, first of all, of the Land for Maine's Future, which also affects local communities, and the difficulties there's been in getting voted issues funded. Another issue, of course, statewide interest. And I would hope, however you feel, at some point we'll hear that the legislature gave some vote of thanks and acclamation to the Quimby family for an incredibly generous gift to the state. And another issue that comes to mind as I stand here is regulation on mining so that it is safe for the environment.
Mike, you want to start with that one?
Sure. So environment, this is Maine. Environment's important for everybody. Last week, actually, Raymond just received a Land for Maine's Future grant. It wasn't a very big one. It was like 33rd on the list of 35. So I joined people last week in the woods sponding and just kind of, cutting trails. I guess I want to talk. Land for Maine's Future, I don't like bonds. I don't like putting money aside like that because my belief is if it's important, we should put it in the budget. We should sit down as adults and say this is our priority. And what happens in Augusta is that politicians, like me, I guess, but I don't do it, is they put all the fun stuff first. They don't talk about schools. They don't talk about Land for Maine. They don't talk about the important stuff till the end. And they create this critical mass of, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, we didn't fund the schools and there's only 2 more days. So if I was governor or king for the day or whatever, I would turn it around and I would take things like this and I would put priorities first. Now, I also want to talk real quickly, I don't know how much time we have, but a few years ago I had somebody slam their door in my face when I knocked on their door politicking. They said, your environmental record's horrible, I'm not voting for you. A couple weeks later, somebody else called me, another constituent, and said, we've got a big trouble with milfoil in Raymond. Sebago Lake is in trouble. And I worked with this person. I knew about it, but I didn't know a lot. Then all of a sudden I knew a lot about it when she downloaded on me. We worked on a bill, and ultimately we didn't go and appropriate new money. We looked at the whole situation, and we found that the bureaucracies in Augusta were spending so much money on literature about milfoil. We pulled a bunch of money, and we gave it to the local organizations like LEA so they could put people in the water to pull the roots out, because that's the only way you get rid of milfoil, and even then it's a task. So I think it was a really creative way. I'm not just someone that's going to go up and spend your money, but I can think very creatively. And we passed that bill, and it actually, I forget, it was $300,000 or $400,000 came into all over the state. It primarily was in this area, but it was all over the state. So I try to be creative about it and not just go up there and spend your money, because that would be easy. I could do that. That would be easy. I try to be creative.
Jessica?
So the Land for Maine's Future program is a really valuable way to preserve some of the things that makes Maine special. I am 100% in support of it. You know, the taxpayers voted for it, and I don't like the idea of going against what the taxpayers approved at the ballot box. I want to talk about bonding a little bit. I don't know about how many of you, when you went out and got your first house, if you were able to pay cash for it. I took a mortgage out, and I kind of tend to think of bonding a little bit like taking out a mortgage. You pay a low interest rate for something that over time is going to be really valuable. You can't always pay the entire amount right up front, but in the long term, that's a goal. You have taken the long view, and you've really made an investment in the future. As far as the National Monument is concerned, it's a national monument, and I think there was a lot of controversy around that, and I think some folks felt, you know, really strongly one way or the other about that. I think we need to look forward on that and utilize that as best we can. I think this is a great economic opportunity for Maine, and I have been invited and hope to get up there someday. Been a little busy this fall. Mining. So, mining has been an environmental disaster for other states, and I just don't want to see that happen here. I don't know if there's a way to do it without causing damage. You know, if there is, I'm willing to listen, because I'm always willing to listen. But I don't, and I've seen what it's done in places out west and in, you know, in West Virginia. So I'd be very cautious about that.
Okay.
Could I do real quick? I forgot a few things.
Real quick.
All right, I didn't mention mining. I believe I voted against it every time. I know because John Martin is always pushing it up in Aroostook, and I know he was mad at me about that. I wasn't for the park only because the people up there, it seemed to me, weren't. Having said that, I think you elect us to be adults. It's real easy to say, you know, everybody voted for this, and so I'm just going to do that. We're actually a republic. We're not a democracy. You elect me to go up for 2 years, and then if I do a terrible job, then we're here tonight, and then you elect her. So sometimes we have to make the hard decisions, and not just say, well, everybody voted for it. I mean, someone mentioned earlier about the funding formula for education, and there was a political party, governor, Senate, House, all in place when that passed, and they didn't fund it. So, you know, that's my point. Is sometimes people make decisions because of the realities and not just because it's good or bad or popular. So, thank you. Sorry. Thank you.
Yeah, quick question to each of you. Are you clean elections candidates? If so, why? If not, why not?
Me? Okay. I'm not. I'm a traditional. I do work with disabled people, and maybe we'll talk about this later if you throw some healthcare issues at me. I'm appalled how they get left behind. I have 3 board members that cannot get out of their houses because we can't fund them. But we are funding programs. We're funding new citizens, and I'm on the board of a program for new citizens. So my heart tugs on that. When I saw what I think senators get $60,000, and I think reps I think it's $15,000 they get. I've raised $2,000 this year. I've got old signs in the back. I've got old cards. I haven't changed in 6 years. I'm the same person. I've been here enough times. You guys know who I am, and if I was king for a day, I'd take that money and I'd get 3 of my board members out of their house to go bowling or something. So, as Eric said, I think it's welfare for politicians.
I am a clean elections candidate, and Mike, the first time you ran, you were a clean elections
Biggest
candidate.
mistake I made, you're right. That's what they told me to do, and I felt dirty as soon as I did it. You're right.
I don't feel dirty about it because I have, at this point, I think it's around 145 people have made a $5 contribution to my campaign. And I can't take special interest money. I can't. I can only be answerable to the people that I represent. And it's just, I think, an opportunity for the people to really, feel like they have a voice in the representation.
Okay. Other questions?
Yes, Marshall Bullock, Raymond. Jess, you advocate for small business development, and Mike, I know you're a proponent of that. So in the event you are elected, what committee assignments would you take, and what bills would you present to enhance business development in Poland, Casco, and Raymond?
Sure.
Because we all have vacancies.
Thank you, Marshall. And this is good because this will be a precursor to the conversation that we'll have in Raymond in a couple of weeks.
Please be specific.
So I've been thinking about this. I don't get to pick what committees I'm on. That's up to leadership.
What would be your choice?
My choice would be, the first committee would be Labor, Commerce, the Economic Development Committee. My second choice would probably be Environment and Natural Resources, because I think in this area in particular, the two really dovetail. I've been thinking a lot about, because we were talking specifically about Raymond, but there's a couple of things I think in Raymond and Poland that could really help economic development. We need to take advantage of our sense of place. We need to promote small businesses that are based on sort of the beauty. So I'm thinking more tourism, more high-end tourism. Introducing legislation that's going to help that. I don't think specifically that would be the role, but I think being a leader is important. But one of the things that we can do to promote business in these corridors is two things. One, high-speed internet and broadband. And the other is sewers. And I know that there's an issue with sewers in Poland. I'm not 100% conversant in that, but I do know that in Raymond it's a really big issue along the 302 corridor, and there are businesses that could have come to our community if we had the opportunity to have sewers. And this, Mike and I would probably disagree, but I think this is a place where bonding could be appropriate.
My turn. I guess I should say I don't think bonding is always the choice, but how often do you vote on a bond? Every election, right? So, and you'd be surprised when you knock on doors how many people don't realize bonding means borrowing. They don't realize that. So, If I was to choose and you're right that we do ask, and the leadership decides. I've been on the education committee for 6 years, and I'm at that point, if I do go back, that I was in leadership last year, actually. So if I do go back, I've already been asked if I'd be on the leadership for the education committee. And I think, in terms of, you're asking about business, you certainly can make parallels. I think in terms of education, there's hopefully a reawakening of community college and other options. Right now we're allowing kids to basically sign off on massive loans and graduate with massive debt and not have skills that'll get them the jobs they want. So I'm hoping that would be a focus to do that. In terms of business itself, one of the styles I have, I just don't go up. There's a farmer who's a rep, and he goes up and he puts in 10 or 15 bills about farms. And there's other people that have focuses. I don't tend to do that. I tend to listen to people, and they ask, and I think Eric said that earlier. People ask me, here's a problem, they explain it to me. So I have some bills people have asked me about. I don't go up and put bills in that are about me, but I can tell you one quick story. Knocking on doors, there was a farmer I talked to who did tours of his barn of animals, kind of cute little thing, and he simply wanted to sell popcorn in his thing. That's all he wanted, was to sell popcorn. He had to go through 7 licensing processes and, of course, 7 fees, and he gave up. He didn't do it. So certainly I think getting less licensing, because you guys are a lot smarter than the government. I truly believe that. The businesses are a lot smarter. So less regulation, and I would just say less taxes. If we were sending less taxes to Augusta, or Washington too, then there'd be more in Raymond, Poland, and Casco. Yeah, so I guess that's my answer.
Can I just say, it does sound a little excessive that it would take 7 licenses to sell popcorn. So I would be willing to look at that, and maybe we should be streamlining those and come up with a, sort of a one-stop shop.
Good answer.
Okay.
My name is Richard Haslip again, and Mr. McClellan, I do have a question for you.
I'm Mike.
All right. One of the things that you had mentioned, that you're in constant communication with the Board of Selectmen here.
Well, that's town managers, which I think splits out. I think they split out.
Okay, well, I appreciate that, and your dedication as well.
Thank you.
However, when I started to do a little research as to who our representative was, I was embarrassed to say that I didn't know who you were. I didn't know who our representative was. So being a representative for as long as you have,
okay.
How come we don't know much about what you've done or what you're specifically going to try to accomplish for the residents here in Poland?
Okay, so I mean, that's a question you kind of asked Eric Brakey, I think, too.
Exactly, it is the same question.
What I've done, well, I've got a list of bills so I could go through them. I mean, they haven't all passed. I was very integral in a bullying bill. It was a bullying bill that passed a couple years ago that I was part of. I mentioned the milfoil bill. Currently, I have a bill that I went against the governor, my party governor, and we are doing a study. It's the first time it's ever happened in the history of Maine, because usually when you try to do a study, you have to get a department, like say my study would have been the Department of Transportation. They refused to help me because what the bill is to study transportation vouchers for people with disabilities, for senior citizens, maybe veterans too. So you can control your rides, as opposed to waiting for buses that aren't coming to your block anyway and aren't going to come on a snowy day. Governor fought me on it. None of his departments would work on it, and Eric Brakey's committee basically empowered the organization I work for to run this study. So there's people all over the state meeting. We met last week again to work on that, trying to give local control to disabled people. I've twice put a bill in. If I was going to do it one more time, I probably will. Unfunded mandates for education are horrible. So we as representatives go up there, we pass a bill, every school should have EpiPens. And then we pass that. The state doesn't have to pay for it. The school system has to pay for it. And I've been there 6 years. I've watched over and over and over. And before my time that happened, the unfunded mandate list is incredible. So I tried to put a bill in last year, and the MEA the union of all people, blocked me on it because lobbies have interest in all these things. So I'm going to put a bill in this time, probably 3 bills. One will take the unfunded mandates that are the most brainless, like, there's a law that all Maine schools have to track their nuclear waste. we can get rid of that bill because there's no nuclear waste. Then there's some bills that are unfunded mandates that are more debatable. We got to talk about it. That'll be a second bill. And then the third bill will be the unfunded mandates that probably we're not going to get rid of, but I'm going to try. And I figured out how to get around the union and all the lobbies to at least get this to a vote. So I've met you before. I apologize if you don't remember me.
I do.
Okay. And if I'm acting hyper, it's only because I am.
Jessica, would you?
Well, I guess it would be hard for me to answer the question because I haven't been elected.
That's true, but what ideas do you have that would directly affect the people of Poland?
What ideas do I have that would directly affect
Or your
the people
district.
of Poland or the
Forgive
district?
me, your district.
Well, let's talk about economic development again. Let's talk about supporting small businesses. Let's talk about infrastructure so that farms and small businesses can get their goods to markets. Let's talk about increasing teacher pay. I mean, since you went off on education too, we're having a really hard time in Maine retaining teachers. I read a newspaper story or heard something on the radio about there are districts who can't find foreign language teachers, and so that they're having to actually buy software to teach kids foreign languages, and I think foreign languages are important. So we need to pay our teachers more. I firmly and strongly believe that. I have a friend who just retired after 32 years of teaching, and she really can't survive, on what she's got because she couldn't save, and Maine State retirement. That's a whole other thing. One of the things that I hear too from the business owners that I talk to is that they're having a hard time filling the jobs. And Elijah actually touched on this, I think, making sure that we educate kids to fit the jobs that are going to be available in the future. Again, this is taking the long view. One of the things that I've heard and one of the things that I feel strongly is that we don't do that often enough in government. I think you get elected for 2 years and you try to fit everything in really fast. And I think if we had more people that really looked down the road, that looked at strategic planning, that took time to think about what the consequences of some of these actions were going to be, and we're able to stand up, at least make voice to that, I feel like we'd be better off, and we wouldn't be in some of the similar positions that we're in now.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Marilyn?
Hey.
My name is Marilyn Flynn. I'm a resident of Poland. I'd just like to ask each of you, how do you view Article 5 of the Constitution? Do you view it favorably? And would you be supportive of that Article 5 as a member of the state legislature?
Me?
Go for it.
You mean the convention? Okay. I'm supportive of it. I was actually disappointed. There was a practice in Washington last week, I guess, and I saw Garrett Mason was there, and I was like, I can't believe they didn't send me down there. So Article 5 is actually, it's in our Constitution, and there's arguments as to the legalities of it and how it actually works, and we don't want to get into that, but basically Article 5 denotes that our federal government is out of control. And they're just mandating stuff. And I'll say it here, the current president he just kind of done his own thing. He has not even gone through the proper channels in many cases. So, but it's not a Republican-Democrat thing. It's both. It definitely is a Republican and Democrat thing. I don't know what happens when you get to Washington and you get through that little wall that gets you in there, but people change. I mean, it stuns me sometimes. So we have, 6 years ago we had a $7 trillion debt, and now it's like $20 trillion, and on and on and on. Our roads aren't fixed. So, I mean, if the roads were good, you'd say, okay, we spent good money. So anyway, the Article 5 basically is a process that you can call a convention of all the states, and there's some legalities to get there. We're getting closer to actually being able to do it, and then the people can take it back from the politicians, and there's very specific rules to it, the way I understand it, so you can't go down there and just kind of change the world, I'm very supportive of it. I think we're way past.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Jessica?
I honestly don't know enough about it to be able to answer that question with any kind of confidence, but I will tell you this. I'm focused on what's happening here in the district, and I'm focused on talking to the people specifically, and what we can do at the state level to make people's lives better. I'm going to stay out of sort of the big stuff and the national politics as much as I can, because I feel like, at least I've learned since I've been knocking on doors for the last 4 or 5 months that that there's a lot to do here, and that's where my energies are going to best be focused. So, but I'd be really happy to talk to you more about it if you want to educate me, because I'm listening. And I remember knocking on your door too, Marilyn.
I think this will be our last question.
Oh, perfect.
Stan Tetman. Going back to the question that I asked at the beginning of the evening about revenue sharing, where it's been decreased from 5% to 2%. The governor wants to do away with it, and actually wants to do away with the income tax. And if he does away with the income tax, that would, just gut, any revenue sharing at all. So I'm wondering, number one, if you agree with the governor. If not, what would you do to increase revenue sharing back to 5% where it was originally passed as a law?
Mike's taking a lot of the questions first. Can
Go
I
for
take
it.
You certainly can.
Thank you. So we need to increase revenue sharing. I hear a lot from people about their concerns with taxes, but what I hear about is property taxes. I don't hear too many people complaining about income taxes. And really, the property tax is the one that affects seniors, people on fixed incomes. It's the most regressive of the taxes that we have. So we need to go back to and Senator Brakey talked a lot about the specific genesis of revenue sharing, and as a business owner, all I know is that it affects my property taxes. So the more that we spread that burden out among everybody, I think the easier it's going to be to allow our seniors to stay at home and to allow young families who are just starting out to be able to afford their own homes and pay their taxes on it. So definitely we need to do a better job.
Thank you. Mike?
Okay. Through the course of the conversation tonight, I've heard something. I want to say I got elected in 2010, and there was a lot of issues going on then. So, I mean, this is very complicated. This hasn't just all happened in the last couple of years. Some very complicated things. I think in my time, I'm on the education committee, and we've done some pretty bold things, and we made some mistakes. My wife tells me all the time, we made some mistakes. But we're trying to work through them and do them better. I probably would struggle with the governor's plan only because it doesn't add up enough. I mean, philosophically, I believe in, and I've said it already tonight, I believe in less taxes, but you just can't simply wrestle it from the towns, without replacing it somehow. And I've actually, in my caucus last year, I stood up, caucus when Republicans meet, when I'm in the caucus, and I said to them, I've spent 6 years in this caucus hearing the Republican thing about we got to save, we got to save, we got to cut, and I've been faithful, and I believed in a lot of it, not always, but a lot of it. But at some point, when do you reinvest? When do you fix the roads? When you just can't keep cut, and never do anything because you're not going to get to zero. So I think I don't really have as much problem with an income tax as I do with I think what you said with the property tax is accurate, and I guess I will argue with the governor on this, but it's not as easy as saying yes or no. There's just a lot of moving pieces in it. And again, to me, anytime we can send less money to Augusta, so you being a good select person in Poland can spend it, we'll be in better shape. I mean, it's very complicated. I am a lot smarter. My wife probably wouldn't agree, but I'm a lot smarter now than I was 6 years ago when I was new and bold and had the world ahead of me. A lot of scars. So.
Great. I want to thank you both for being with us today.
Thank you so much.
Thanks very much.
Now, well, wait a minute, folks. Don't leave yet. We're not over yet. Not over yet.
No.
Sorry.
I think I broke this thing.
The last section that we have here, folks, I understand we may have some candidates for different positions here. Do we?
I'd like to speak for Joanna Sade.
Okay.
She's running for probate, register of probate.
Okay.
She was elected by the governor to fill the seat which was vacant that somebody had left, and now she's running again. She's from Livermore, and if you see little brown signs out there that say Joanna Sade, she doesn't have many, and they're hers. And I want to thank you.
Okay. Very good. Are there any other candidates here? Nope. Okay. Before you leave, just in closing, got a couple of comments.
Thank you,
First of all, Election Day is November 8th. And voting, no matter how you feel about the candidates, whether you feel you have an option to choose for, it is not only a right, it is a responsibility. So please get out and vote. There's no excuse for not getting out, because you can vote by absentee ballot if you want to. So please do so. I want to thank Linda Carey, the people behind the scenes, Linda who received our emails, and Joel and company who manned the cameras and kept that going. And again, the Friends of Ricker Library for sponsoring this. And thank you all for coming. Have a good night.
We want to thank you, Rand.